Hi everyone, Digital Herrera here. Told you I'd be back. Well, hopefully you didn't have too many problems with the homework. So now we're going to move on to Preview 14. So if you could please open up your ISNs to Preview 14, and if you want to follow along, you can open up the PowerPoint in today's update in Schoology, and we're going to go ahead and get going. Preview 14 is 2 pages in your ISN. I'm not sure what page numbers they're on in your ISN, but they should look like these. So, based on your homework last night, you should have an idea of who Andrew Jackson is. But I think that Andrew Jackson is one of my favorite presidents to learn about because he's such an interesting character. Not necessarily because he's good or bad, although you could make a case either way. I think the events that surround him really are the things that make him so unique. And so unique is our 7th president. So we're going to be exploring some of those things as we move through the unit. And I really enjoy this unit because you have a chance to kind of analyze some historical texts and mostly pictures and songs, and really kind of explore the meaning of the text. I know that sounds super boring, but it's good. It's a life skill, really. It's analyzing political cartoons so you can kind of dig down and see what the author is really intending, the message the author is really intending to send within the context of the times. So just in case you haven't had a chance to find Preview 14 in your ISN or download the PowerPoint from Schoology yet, you have a second to do so. I figured I'd start out with a short video on Jackson. It's part of that Disney series, talks about the president. So without further ado, I give you the Jackson video.
Up until 1829, all of our presidents had been aristocratic, dignified, educated, and presidential. And then came Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson represented America's common man. And by that, we mean he was a man who commonly looked for a fight wherever he could. He fought in the Revolutionary War when he was 13. He fought in the War of 1812. He invaded Florida in 1818, and he still found time to get into plenty of duels, getting shot 3 times for his efforts.
Is that all you got?
Thomas Jefferson said,
I feel much alarmed at the prospect of seeing General Jackson president. He is one of the most unfit men I know for such a place.
But many Americans thought a common man like Jackson would best represent their wishes for America's future. The election of 1828 was a rematch between Fancy Pants John Quincy Adams and regular Guy Jackson. And things got ugly fast. Adams called Jackson
A barbarian who could hardly spell his own name.
Jackson replied,
It is a damn poor mind indeed, which can't think of at least 2 ways to spell any word.
Apparently, there's only one way to spell loser, because Adams was defeated. And Jackson became president. Jackson said no to any legislation that expanded the federal government, or that he thought did not benefit the common man. This philosophy became known as Jacksonian democracy.
The democracy that he created, the democratic process that he created, and the Democratic Party that he created, put the people really in the middle of everything. And we are the children of that very system.
The trouble was that Jackson's definition of a common man was, well, usually a white guy who had a lot in common with him. Even though the Supreme Court had ruled in favor of Cherokee rights, Jackson authorized the Indian Removal Act, forcing tens of thousands of Native Americans to leave their land. Jackson was also a strong supporter of states' rights, in theory. But when the citizens of South Carolina refused to follow federal laws on tariffs because they saw the tariffs as unfair, Jackson immediately threatened to hang their leader, his own vice president, John Calhoun. Ouch.
Andrew Jackson is an interesting example of a figure becoming president. He's a military figure who rises to the office and has to deal with a number of different issues. A very contentious Congress and a lot of fights between him and the Congress over who should really run the government.
Jackson's biggest fight was with the Second Bank of the United States.
Jackson and his associates thought that this was a monopoly, that this was run by rich people for rich people, and that it should be destroyed.
Jackson was sick one night in the White House, and his vice president came by to see him, Martin Van Buren, and Van Buren looked at him with great concern because Jackson looked so sick, and Jackson roared up and said, "The bank is trying to kill me, Mr. Van Buren, but I will kill it." And he did.
To the dismay of Congress, which supported the bank. Andrew Jackson had strong opinions and was always fighting. Sometimes because he just liked to fight, but usually because he was fighting for a better America.
So there you have it, Andrew Jackson in a nutshell. Well, in this lesson, we're going to kind of explore that concept that they talked about at the very beginning of that video, Andrew Jackson being a common man, kind of what that means to his presidency and how it relates to the previous presidents, 1 through 6. So please go ahead and open the PowerPoint if you are following along that way. Have your ISN open, and we're going to get started with Preview 14. So there are two compelling questions that I want to focus on for this unit. The first, was Andrew Jackson a good president? That question really can't be answered until the end of the unit, but it does lead to the second question, how well did Andrew Jackson promote democracy during his presidency? I want you to take a minute and explore this question in groups. When you're looking at this question, I want you to think about what does it mean to promote democracy? I guess you'd have to first answer, what is democracy? What does that mean? Or what does that look like in a presidency? So before you go answering the question about Andrew Jackson, we need to first understand what is democracy and how would a president make his presidency more democratic. See? That wasn't so bad. Well, here comes the hard part. Go ahead and share with the class what you guys are talking about, if you haven't already done so. If you've already talked about it in class, then let's go ahead and move on. However, if you have talked about it in class, hopefully your discussion revolved around democracy and what democracy is. I think that in a lot of cases, democracy is including more people, including everyone, really, frankly, in the democratic process, in the creation of government and the function of government and the role of government. So when we talk about a president being democratic or more democratic or whatever the question is asking, really what we're saying is how much or to what extent did a given president, or does it a given president, involve not just the political elite, but pretty much everyone else in the country? Because after all, a democracy is a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. So it's important to involve the people. And that means everyone. So you should be looking at the first page of Preview 14. We're going to get started with the image analysis question. So as you're looking in your ISN, go ahead and read along with me. Judging from this painting of George Washington at a banquet, what were some of the characteristics of people who ran the government during the Federalist period? What 3 words would best describe them? So take a look at this picture and look past the thing that you first see, obviously a picture of George Washington at his inauguration. Look at who the people are, who is in attendance, where they're standing, what are they wearing, what is the weather like, what does the building look like, what is the body language of the people around them, what status would they have in the community or the society. Look in every corner of this image, Remember, this is not a picture taken by a camera, so there aren't any accidental photo bombs or anything like that. The artist intentionally put every detail into this picture, so ask yourself, why might this person be here, or maybe who isn't here, who isn't represented. So go ahead and look for those types of things. And also make sure to record your thoughts and answers in your ISN, and we will come back in a couple of minutes. So I'm sure you guys had some great discussions. Here's kind of what I saw in that Washington picture, just off the cuff. So hopefully your discussion revolved around the type of people and what they were wearing at Washington's inauguration. You look around, you see all these nice people dressed really well in this building with these opulent windows and the flags. Maybe you got one troublemaker there to your right, but everyone else looks pretty calm and well put together and well dressed and rich. Except you've got that one little guy in the corner. He doesn't look like he quite belongs. But long and short of it, you have the political elite populating Washington's inauguration. So next up, we're going to listen to a song. This is called The President's March. This song might not make your top 10 most listened to songs, but that's not really the point. What we're looking for here, as we've talked about with previous song analysis, how does this song make you feel? Like, what kind of reaction does this pull from you? Just right off the cuff. Nothing. I mean, don't think too far into it. It should kind of grab you from the start. And what do you think that tells you about our first president, George Washington? So we'll go ahead and listen to the song. After that, take a few minutes to talk in your groups, and then we'll come back together for page 2. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed that. So now you should be on to page 2, which should look something like this. So again, we're going to begin by exploring an image, this time of Andrew Jackson, stopping to meet and greet some folks, maybe along the way to Washington, D.C. as a senator. Again, looking at the details that go into this painting, remembering that there are no accidental details in a painting. What were some of the characteristics of the people who ran government during the Jacksonian era, and what 3 words would best describe Jackson and his supporters? Take a few moments, jot down your thoughts, and then go ahead and talk in your groups, and then from there we will talk as a class. All right, let's do it. Let's talk as a class. All right, so again, I'm going to give you my opinion on what I saw and kind of see if it matches up to what you guys were talking about. All right, so here we have Jackson standing on his carriage. Looks like a nice carriage, but nothing too expensive, right? You see in the background some rolling hills. He's greeting his supporters, maybe on his way to the Senate. His supporters don't look super well dressed, very well dressed by today's standards, but nothing terribly fancy. He's riding along. One thing that is I think particularly interesting is the absence of people. You don't see any armed guards. You don't see anyone that kind of looks like royalty here. The only person with Jackson here is his carriage driver. Nothing fancy here. Just goes back to that concept of the common man supporting Jackson. All right, just like you thought. There was a song for the first page. There's a song on the second page. So here we go. As you listen to the second song, The Hunters of Kentucky, think about how this song makes you feel. Again, don't read into it too much. What 3 words might be used to best describe this song? And what does this song tell you about our 7th president? All right, without further ado, I give you The Hunters of Kentucky.
Here, gentlemen and ladies fair that grace this famous city, come listen if you've time to spare while I rehearse this ditty. And for the opportunity, consider yourself lucky. It is not often that you see a hunter from Kentucky. Oh, Kentucky, the hunters of Kentucky. Now you all did read in the public prints how Pakenham attempted to make our Hickory Jackson wins, but soon his scheme repented. Jackson, he was wide awake and he wasn't scared at trifles. Oh well, he knew what aim we'd take with our Kentucky rifles. Oh, Kentucky, the hunters of Kentucky. Well, a bank was raised to hide our breasts, not that we thought of dying, but that we always like to rest, lest our game is flying. Behind it stood our little band, none wished it to be greater. Every man was half a horse and half an alligator. Oh, Kentucky, the hunters of Kentucky. Well, the British found 'twas vain to fight where lead was all their booty, and so they wisely took to flight and left us all this beauty. So if danger e'er annoys, remember what our trade is. Send for us Kentucky boys and we'll protect you ladies. Oh, Kentucky, the hunters of Kentucky.
Well, I hope you like that one too. Go ahead and take a few minutes and jot down your thoughts if you haven't already done so. Then go ahead and share them in your small groups, and then in a couple minutes we will get back together as class. Class time. Ready? Share. Alright, I'm sure that went well. Because if it didn't, Digital Herrera is going to have to let regular Mr. Herrera know. Remember, we talk. Anyway, now it's time for the dreaded compare and contrast. We're going to look at the 2 images that we've looked at today, and we're going to compare how those 2 images are different. Okay, so let's look at the last question on page 2. Feel free to jump back and forth on your iPad to make those pictures smaller if you want to go to the previous slides or whatever you have to do. Anyway, judging from the images and songs you have analyzed, how do you think the Jacksonian era was different from the Federal period? What do you think accounts for this difference? Take a minute to jot down your own thoughts, and then in a moment, you'll come together in your groups to share your thoughts, and then finally, we'll come back together as a class. All right, all together now. All right, so one more time, my thoughts on what we were looking at. I'm sure you guys had a lot of great thoughts and observations, but here's what I got. All right, so comparing and contrasting these two images, we have Washington here again, courting the political elite. We're talking high class here, except for that little guy in the corner. Very much just the small group of people run country. Whereas Jackson is talking to the common man. He's got regular folks. He's, in the hills of Tennessee, and he's just talking to the regular man. All right, so in summary, not that one president is necessarily good and one president is necessarily bad, but we tend to think of Washington as this really high-achieving example of presidents to follow. But when you compare him to a person like Andrew Jackson, Washington wasn't trying to make the government more accessible to the common man. In fact, a lot of the founders, as we talked about in the previous units, they feared the common man. Andrew Jackson, on the other hand, believed that it was his job to kind of open up this government to the common man because that's who he was and that's where he came from. Now, whether making the government or the office of president more democratic makes you a good president or it makes you a worse president or it has no impact on your overall presidency, I think that's up for debate, but it definitely is something to look at. All right, well, thank you for that rich and compelling discussion. If we're done before class gets out, you've got a little bit of time to get your homework started, which is to read 14.1 and fill out the graphic organizer in your ISM. Let me talk to you really quickly about that. All right, so the directions are as follows. They say that a picture is worth 1,000 words. Use the images that were given below and the reading from 14.2. This actually should say 14.1, little mistake here, to tell the story of how Andrew Jackson became our 7th president. So basically what you're going to do is first you have to read 14.1. Never mind this. Again, it's not 14.2. Let me make that correction. 14.1. Okay, there we go. 14.1, and you're going to take that information and you're going to figure out why they put this picture here, and you're going to explain what that picture has to do with Jackson's upbringing. Again, same thing over here. Why? Oops, don't do that. That is the wrong thing to do. So why Jackson on a horse? What does that mean? And you're going to write that over here. So Jackson Forever, this is a campaign poster. And then lastly, you're going to draw your own picture and you're going to explain why you put that picture on there and what that has to do with Jackson's life and like how it was left out or how that the picture was left out or whatever. Okay, I hope that helps. Oh, also, you need to be using these terms in your writing. Okay, well, good luck and have fun.